Today's topic, access control. So I guess the intercom was kind of relevant there. We're going to look at an intercom scenario, a very common intercom scenario. Sorry, not intercom, access control scenario. This is one that we have at our office. This is the exact scenario we had at our office. But what I'm about to show you is also completely scalable. This could go from 1 door to 100 doors. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to share my screen with you so that I can show you what we are talking about. And this is the game of screens where we see whether I share the right one. There we go. We are going to look at primarily replacing an existing access control system for Loxon. It is remarkably simple to do. In this office, as an example, we had an old Lenel access control system. Lenel is one of those brands that I've always heard about, but I've never actually touched. And I still haven't because we ripped it out. But we had above every door a panel, a little metal enclosure with a 12-volt power supply in and a 12-volt backup battery. Seemed like a perfect place to just stick some Loxon kit in. And that's what we're going to look at today. I have actually already written up asset notes for how to do this. So you can see here, here's our asset notes for how to do this. So replacement of a main controller unit, replacement of secondary units, replacement of secondary units using the Loxon button air. It's all already written up. And as a reminder for everybody, please use the Loxon Online Academy. Every Loxon partner, silver and above, has access to this academy. academy-uk.loxon.com. And in here, as well as all the qualification topics and these webinars as well that are all recorded and all available to watch back here, you will also see this folder for assets and application notes. In there, all of those application notes, like the access control one, aircon integration, Texcom Premier Elite integration is all in there, as well as any assets that we might have made for you to use. So for instance, I've made a series of assets for Affinity Designer, as some people use that for floor plan markups and panel designs. Boom, go ahead, download them. Cool. So let's change camera. And let's take a look at what I've got prepared for you. So, as I mentioned, we have in our building an existing Lenel access control system. And I have made especially sure that I have wired this up just like an access control engineer does. So I've purposely made sure it's an absolute spaghetti junction. I've made sure that I've crammed far too many cores of a cable into a terminal. I've made sure I have not included any ferrules anywhere, just for good measure. So real access control job here. So what we have, and this is the exact layout we have in our office. There is a main unit in our server room that had actually, funnily enough, this panel in. That main unit is where the network connection is located. So what we've done is we've replaced that with just a tiny little Loxon panel. It actually is not a demo case. It doesn't even have a tree or airbase or RGBW dimmer in. It doesn't need to. It's just a mini server and a power supply. There is then, the way that the Lenel system works is all of the slave controllers are on a bus, an RS485 bus. This is incredibly common. You'll see this on Paxton Net 2. You'll see this on Gallagher. You'll see this even on things like Salto as well. It's incredibly common that you have one control unit that's the master with an Ethernet connection, and then the others are slaved off it as RS485 or something along those lines. And so what you then get is you get a data connection from the main controller through to the subcontrollers. In the case of our building, that is actually a 4-core Belden. So green, white, red, black. And I know we talk a lot about tree on tree cable or Cat7. Tree is amazing. Tree is incredibly robust. That 4-core Belden, there's no reason why it can't run tree. So that's exactly what I've done. I've put 24 volts on the red and black, and obviously tree on the green and white. And we have that running into our control panel. Then in the control panel, because this is obviously at a separate location, that control panel at a separate location just above the door, because access control engineers, we always stick the controller just above the door, has cables going to push to exit button, break glass, lock. Depending on who wired it will depend on how many cables you have and what different locations they go off to. So what I'm going to need is I'm obviously going to need an NFC code touch. That's tree. So that needs to come back to this Belden cable here. I'm going to have a push to exit. So that's going to be a digital input. That means I need local digital inputs at this panel. Okay, easy. Nano DI tree. Then I'm going to have a break glass. Break glass doesn't actually have to have any involvement with Loxon. Most important thing about a break glass is it actually overrides the lock regardless of your access control equipment, because it's an emergency point of call. And then obviously we have the lock. In a commercial environment, the lock would obviously normally be a mag lock, but I didn't have any spare mag locks lying around, but I did just happen to have a spare Winkhouse AV2 E-lock. This is a multi-point motorized lock. So on the cable that comes out of it, you have 3 cores that you need to use. You have white, brown, and green. You put a permanent 12 volts on white and brown, and then you put a 12-volt trigger on the green, and that causes the lock to open. As you can see, this is locked. You always have a manual override on a Winkhouse lock, which is really, really good thing. So what I've done, first thing I've done is, as I said, we need to have that break glass separate from the access control system. So at the moment, none of this stuff is programmed up, but this break glass should still work. So what I've done is, again, I've made sure I've done this very badly on purpose, falling back into old habits as an access control engineer. I've got my permanent 12 volts connected here. So that's just connected straight from the power supply straight through to the lock. Then what I've done is I've taken the normally closed contact from the break glass, and I've connected that to the green wire of the lock. So that's the wire, that's the trigger wire, which means that in theory, if I open this break glass, ta-da, the door opens, and I've now got free access. Cool, so the break glass is working, nice and easy. Close the break glass again. There we go. Lock should lock, and it does. Cool, so straight away, even though my wiring's absolutely gash, it proves I at least know what I'm doing with an access control system. And then of course, for the other 12-volt trigger to this lock, which is wired in parallel, that needs to come from a relay. And again, this is a sub panel, quite a far distance away from the mini server. So in the panel, Nano 2 relay tree. Nice, simple setup. So the main panel, mini server, could even be a mini server go with a tree extension if you wanted. And then every other door location, you're just using that 4-core Belden for 24 volt and tree. You are sending the 24 volt down to the NFC code touch. And then the tree is going to the Nano DI tree, Nano 2 relay tree, and obviously the NFC code touch. Simple. All of these incredibly low power devices. In our building, for example, we've got 8 different access control doors, 3 devices at each on the same 4-core Belden going throughout, and it's spaghetti junction above the ceilings, and there's no issues whatsoever. So then this power supply unit, this Elmdene unit, is what was already in there. It's a 12-volt power supply. So what I've done is I've just connected the ground from the power supply straight down to the lock. So depending on who wired this will depend on how many cables you have coming into your panel. Now, us access control engineers usually like to use the cheapest possible cable we can. So you'll usually have either an 8-core alarm cable or a 10-core reader cable because they're dirt cheap. They're made out of copper-clad aluminium and we don't know any better. And that's actually, again, exactly what we have here. We have, I think actually it was an 8-core, no, it was a 10-core reader cable. So there was one 10-core reader cable that went down to the break glass and then from the break glass to the lock. So all I've done on that one is I've commoned up all of the blacks. So I've just twisted all the blacks together and I'm putting ground on them. Then I'm using the blue, just a single blue core as the 12-volt trigger. So you can see I've got 12 volts coming from the power supply here down to this Wago here. This Wago is then connected to the common of my Nano 2 relay tree, and it's also connected to the cores that I'm using for the permanent 12 volts. And then the first relay of the Nano 2 relay tree is connected onto that trigger core I've got on that cable. And that's one of those 10 core reader cables done. The other 10 core reader cable, the way that that worked is that one went down to the push to exit button, and then it was out the back of the push to exit button through to the keypad. So what I've done with that is I've taken the green and white on that cable and obviously used that for tree. I've taken the black and red on that cable and used that for 12 volt power. And then again, because we like using crap cables, this cable actually has 5 black cores in, which is very, very handy for color identification. And then I've used another blue and black pair for the digital input from this door release. Depending on who wired it, maybe 3 cables, maybe slightly different cables for each thing. Who knows? So there's the wiring. It's actually, I know it looks a little bit spaghetti, but a few sticky back pads, a little bit of cable tie here and there. It'll be neat as anything. But I did that in 20 minutes, just sat over there while Cameron was running a training course. So not overly taxing to do. So all wired up, it should be ready to configure and ready to go. So I'll share my screen again. And that particular enclosure, this one here, this particular panel, I recognize that straight away. It's made by a company called Elmdene. Elmdene make a huge range of just open enclosure boxes. This one, for instance, is designed for battery backup. So there's a battery terminal here on the board when you can connect a battery in there. This is a 12 volt one. They also make 24 volt ones. So this one here, for instance, is 24 volts. There also has a mains and battery failed output as well, which you could also wire into digital inputs. This break glass that I've got is only a single pole break glass, but if you had a double pole break glass, you could actually use the second pole as a digital input to know if somebody had pressed the break glass as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with no extra hardware. These, to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think you can pick these boxes up for somewhere between 60 and 80 quid. I mean, we already had them in the building. But it also means that if you want the main panel where the mini server's going to be battery backed up, you can just buy the 24 volt one to put at the main location. That's your mini server and all of the 24 volt backed up. And then at each individual panel, you can just have 12 volts for the maglock. Maglocks as well usually have a jumper on them just inside the plate that switches them from 12 to 24 volt mode. So most maglocks you can also run at 24 volts. So yeah, there you go. There's the range of 24 volt ones. You can get them at loads of different amp ratings. So you could go, you know, you actually don't need to. You probably only need a couple of amps at most. Stick a couple of, as you can see, it can fit 2 12 volt 17 amp hour batteries in. That will probably battery back up a mini server, some NFC code touches, some nanos, and some Nano 2 relay trees, probably for about 2 days. So you really don't have to worry about battery backup levels. And when you get power supplies, security power supplies like this, even though they say 12 volt or 24 volt, they actually aren't. The 12 volt ones usually actually output about 13.8 volts, and the 24 volt ones, as you can see here, actually outputs 27.6 volts. Again, this is absolutely fine. Nano 2 relay tree can go to 28 volts. Sorry, Nano DI tree to 28 volts. Nano 2 relay tree can also go to 28 volts, and the mini server can even go up to 30 volts. So still within the voltage tolerance for all of them as well. Without further ado, let's get configuring. So I've just connected to the mini server at the moment. That's all I've done so far. So the first thing I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to learn in my peripherals, just as we always do, tree extension, tree device search. Bring this over here. Cool. There's the Nano 2 relay tree. So that is our, what are we going to call that? That's our wink house lock. It's going to be the front door. Room, that can go in the entrance lobby. Installation location. Oh no, I've had the page pop up asking me to create the room. And because I'm sharing screens across multiple places, I can't actually get to it. Here we go. Entrance lobby, okay. Installation location, that is above the front door because access control engineers, that's where we always stick it. Add. Nano DI tree, that is the front door monitoring. Installation location is above the door again. Add. NFC code touch, that is front door keypad. Entrance lobby, and that's actually at the front door. Add. And those are the 3 devices added. Nice and simple. Really, really nice and straightforward. While that's saving in, I imagine there is going to be a firmware update for maybe 1 or 2 of those devices. So while that is just doing that update, to mention as well, sometimes if you have a really, really good security installer, like I used to be, then you'll find that we would centralize several panels at a riser, for instance. So when I used to do college jobs and they were brand new installs, we would try in each of the risers to have maybe 6 or 7 access control units in each riser. So instead of having them above each door, we'd have them at the riser. And that actually makes your job even easier because you can just replace that whole lot for one big panel. You've got one mini server then that has 8 relays on. So straight away, that's 8 different locks done just from the mini server. You've got 8 digital inputs. That's 8 push buttons straight from the mini server. And then you only need to use the existing cabling that's already there for the NFC code touches. So straight away, if you have centralized locations for the cost of a mini server, you've got 8 doors done. So Loxon can be a really cost-effective access control solution. But obviously, the next important thing is going to be configuring this lot. I was correct. The Nano 2 relay tree does indeed need an update. I'm just going to change the application on that because by default, it's for blinds. We want it to be universal. And I have used relay 1, which is up. So I'm going to rename that relay to front door lock. Brilliant. I have wired the request to exit button, so the push button door release, to input 1. So I'm going to rename input 1 as request to exit. And the keypad is the keypad. So let's get configuring. So this page here is going to be the entrance lobby. I'm going to put that as the default room as well. I'm going to take the NFC code touch and I'm going to drag it out onto the page. Okay. I'm actually going to rename that as front door access. And here's our NFC code touch. I'm also going to need that request to exit button. And I'm also going to need that lock relay. Now, what do I need to happen? First thing I need to happen is I need, obviously, if a correct code gets entered, that it triggers the lock. Now, the Wink House lock, because it's a trigger to unlock it, means that you can just connect it straight to Q1 like that, because it's a normally open go and close circuit. When you close the circuit, you'll open the door. By comparison, a maglock is a closed circuit that you want to open. You want to remove power from the maglock to unlock the maglock. So on a maglock, you need to invert it. Now with a maglock specifically, I don't normally use NOT blocks, but with a maglock specifically, I would use a NOT block for that inversion. The reason being is that you can then tie multiple inputs to the NOT block. And then obviously your maglock would connect to Q. But again, Wink House lock means doesn't need to be inverted. Wink House lock straight to Q1. This NFC code touch, if you want to, you can tie in any number of parameters you want. So number of entries, straight off in even a small commercial building, you probably want to go for the maximum number. You can only save up to 100 logs on the mini server. If you need to go above 100, then there is an output on this block for text output of who was authorized, so TQU. And what you want to do is you want to take TQU into a log file, which you will find under messages. So we could create a logger. And then what you would want to do with that is have that writing to a separate location, maybe a NAS drive or something. And then you can have audits as long as you want. But that's how you would get additional audit trails. So that's the number of entries. Allow additional pre-selections. We don't need. That's really only if you were doing an absolutely huge commercial office block and you wanted to use the intercom as the doorbell. So if you ticked that and somebody lived in flat 300, a guest could type in 300 and then press the bell button and it would output that number on B cell, which you could then use for additional logic to bring up the intercom in only that one flat. That's how you get around using the Loxon intercom for MDU buildings. But to me personally, it's a little bit of a faff, so I wouldn't choose that option. Two-factor authentication means that somebody needs to input both a code and a tag to get access through the door. So that would be, for instance, in a highly secure office. NFC confirms entry. Does it flash green or red when you've input a code? Backlight brightness, pretty self-explanatory. On duration of the output pulse. That means that when I successfully type in a code or present a fob, for how long will this output activate for? Now, Hugh's figures. If you are using a maglock, 5 seconds. Maglock, you want it to open for 5 seconds because it needs to open for long enough for somebody to open the door, get through, close the door behind them. For a triggered motor lock, like this wink house lock, you literally need a half-second pulse because the door has inbuilt monitoring to know when you've reclosed it again. So half-second pulse in a wink house lock, more than enough. And then you can also choose if you want to have the backlights automatically come on during nighttime, or if you want, you could manually turn the backlight on, but it's a little bit unnecessary. And that's this bit done. Somebody's asked how long I would recommend for a strike lock. The same as a mag lock, 5 seconds. On a strike lock, you may even have to go up to 7 seconds, but I would say same as a mag lock to start with, 5. Cool. Request to exit. Done. Nothing more that you need to do with that. Just connect it straight to your relay. If it is a maglock, you would again need it to unlock the maglock for 5 seconds. To do that, really simple function block would be a switch off delay. Switch off delay, you could have the delay set for 5 seconds. And that means, again, when somebody pressed the request to exit button, it will wait 5 seconds before it turns that output off. And if it was a maglock, again, there would be a not block in between. So there'd be a not block just here. I'm actually going to leave the switch off delay there and set it for half a second. With this logic, you won't get an audit trail of when the exit button has been pushed. I have made a feature request for having an exit button input on the NFC code touch. However, I can also see the reason that it's not there. It's kind of irrelevant. When do you know, it's not going to tell you anything. Great, somebody pushed the exit button, but it doesn't tell me who. So it's pretty much useless. So you won't be able to see when somebody's pressed the exit button, but hey ho. You could, if you wanted to, rename this switch off delay block as exit button. And then you could connect that to the logger as well. And then you would get that audit trail. But to me, it's a little bit over the top. If you have one of our new intercoms, so network periphery, add network device intercom. So this is actually the new intercom and it were dragged out. Then you could also connect the button from that, because you know you've got 3 user-defined buttons in an intercom, you could also connect that to this switch off delay, which would also open the door. But long story short, that's access control with Loxon. I'm just going to add in a key code for my admin user. So I'm going to edit their authentication and add in a key code of 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice and secure for them. Press OK, save in. And what we should now find, if I stop sharing my screen and I switch my webcam, at the moment, door is locked. Maglock should still work, and it does. Put the glass back in, and door's locked again. Door release that's on that digital input should also work if one of the cables hadn't come out the back of it. So put the cable back in there. And that works as well. And it's now already locked. So door release is working as well. And then finally, 1, 2, 3, 4, tick, green light, open door, close door. Look at that. Start to finish, what, 10 minutes? Access control system commissioned. So I actually really love Loxon for access control. It is very flexible. Now, obviously, we've got a little bit of time left on the webinar. So for me, the next most important thing, if I'm thinking back to my access control engineer days, I would say the most complex thing of access control is when you hand it over to the user to manage. Because Net2, for instance, Paxton Net2 is incredibly simple to install. Like the ACU, the control unit, they don't even write on it anymore. They draw pictures on it. Like it is literally, oh, exit button goes there, maglock goes there. It is so simple. The difficulty with those kind of systems, and most of them I would say fall into this trap, is the software to manage access is quite cumbersome. It's clearly been designed by an engineer who has no user interface experience. So it's clunky. It's a little bit all over the place. And also, again, to use the example of Net2, I'm not purposefully talking bad about Net2. It's just because it's one that I have a lot of experience with. You have to install the software. It has to be installed on a Windows PC. And it has to be on the same network or able to communicate with another PC that's running as the server. So with Net2, you have to have a specific PC running as the server. And then any client that you want has to be able to communicate with that server. And trust me, when we used to do college jobs, we could have 3 doors installed in a day, and it would take us 4 weeks just to get the rights to install the software on PCs. Loxon, for the user side of things for access control, we can massively speed up that process. So I'm going to keep it a real life scenario, our office. So in our office, we obviously have a bunch of users. So we have me. We have Tyron. We have Heather. We have Nico. We have Scott. And that'll probably do it. I don't need to add everyone. So loads of different users, whoever you want. And my preference is wherever possible to use user groups. The reason being is that if you give a certain person permissions through the app, they can't create user groups, but they can add people to existing user groups. So in our office, for example, user groups that we have. First of all, we have a cleaner group. That is for our cleaner, Magda, who I'm actually going to add as a user as well. How many users can you have is a question that's just been asked. That is an excellent question that I actually don't know the answer to. Let's put it this way. The campus I believe, is currently up to about 1,000 users, and there's no issues. I'm guessing it would all be down to the file system size as the mini server. So when the mini server says 100%. So we've got Magda as well, who's our cleaner. We've then also got a group for our general staff members. So we've got a general staff group. So this is general access, people who can get into most parts of the building. We then also have specific areas of the building where only certain members of staff are allowed to access. Now that specifically is our warehouse. Of course, we can't just let anybody into the warehouse. So we have two different things to do there. We have warehouse access for staff members. So that would be Scott, Stephen, and Luke, because those are the three members of staff that are allowed in the warehouse. And then, of course, me and Tyrone, you know, with our fancy new roles, who are managers, can pretty much access anywhere at any time of the day. And I accidentally created them as users, not as user groups. So let's try again. User group, we have warehouse, and we have manager. Cool. So those are our users. Those are our user groups. A couple of questions that have just come in. Could we integrate card readers, for example, other manufacturers? Who knows? Card readers normally speak either a proprietary technology, like for instance, a Net2 reader is proprietary, a Salto reader is proprietary, so they'll only work on their own systems. Otherwise, open standard readers, for example, HID, usually use a technology called Wiegand. We don't speak Wiegand. So you would need a Wiegand module that could then talk a language that we could talk, like RS-485 Modbus. To me, by the time you've gone to the additional kind of configuration, finding products, making them work together, it's going to cost you 3 times as much as an NFC code touch. The only reader I would see a purpose in using other than the NFC code touch would be if you wanted biometrics. And to be honest, I spent my entire access control career talking people out of biometrics because they never work properly. The minute it's cold, or you've got a crack on your thumb, or the reader's having a little bit of an off day, or it's a little bit rainy outside, biometrics doesn't work. Graham has actually just reminded me that we also have a new feature to allow you to import users from a CSV file. And yes, Graham, it does use a funky delimiter. It uses a semicolon. So you can download the template file. And then you can open that in Excel. And Graham, the trick is, it's been a while since I've done this, so please forgive me if I get it wrong. You open Excel first and create a blank document, and then you go to data and you get data from text/CSV. Select your template file. Begins with a T. Where is it? Where did it go? Where's the template? All files. T. Where's template? Where did I stick it? Where did I put it? Did I put it in documents? There it is. I did. And then that should find your delimiter for you. So you see, load it up, file origin, Western European, delimiter, semicolon, load. There's the template, start overwriting it, and then you should be able to save it back out as a CSV with a semicolon delimiter. But yeah, it uses a semicolon as the thing between them. But that means that you can really, really quickly just give this to your customer. How does the client add users? I'll show you in a second. But you could, before you commission the system, just give this file to the customer, say, add all of your users, your passwords, your user interface passwords, yeah, everything you want in here, and then you import it for them. So that's CSV file import. So I've got my users and I've got my user groups. Now, Heather is our office admin. So she's the person that we give control of this over to add new users, but we don't want her having config access. So what we do is we obviously give Heather a password. I'm going to give her a very, very secure password of password, and she's going to use this for the app. And then we have to obviously give her her app permissions. So that's Heather sorted. Then we are going to manage Heather's permissions. And in her permissions, we are going to say that she can access the app, and she can also access user management. So anyone with this user management tick box under their permissions has the ability to edit users in the app. So I'm actually not going to do Heather just yet. Let's do it on the groups level to start with, because as I said, Heather won't be able to adjust those groups in the app, only add people to them. So cleaner, manage permissions. What can the cleaner group do? The cleaner group can only access our NFC code touch. So front door access. The only thing the cleaner can do is get through the front door. So there is no app access on there. They cannot use the app. They can just get through the front door. We can also add in a time that they can get through this door as well by creating a new schedule time. Oh, I need to change that. Why does it say new switching time? Oh, I need to make a note of that. 1 second, guys. Sorry. I work on internal alphas and sometimes the translations go a bit squiffy. Create new switching time. Cool. So I'm going to create a new schedule called, that's brilliant as well, called cleaner. And the cleaner can only get in once a week between the hours of 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., for example, whatever you want. And that's then the cleaner's access time. So that's the cleaner group sorted. Next, we have our general staff group. So full access is an administrator. Nobody's an administrator. General staff, manage permissions. They can use the app, but they can't manage users. They can change their own passwords, though, that's fine. Then rooms, actually, they can access everything in the entrance lobby, both in the app and also physically through that NFC code touch. We could also add in access times for them as well if we wanted to. However, our staff are allowed into the main part of the office whenever they like. So even if somebody wants to come in at a weekend, and that's the general staff done. Manager, this is me and Tyron. So our access is pretty much everything. In fact, it is everything. So we can get into config, we can get into the app, we can manage users, we can change operating times, the whole shebang. And we can do that for every room as well. So it's very, very important that if you don't tick any rooms, the app would be blank for you. Because just because you can get into the app doesn't mean you can see anything in there. You have to select either the rooms or the blocks that that person can see. And that would be me and Tyron done. And then finally, warehouse, which would be Luke, Scott, and Stephen. Adrian's asked, so why not manager just be full access? It's a very good question. Just generally speaking, because I am pedantic, and for me, full access is where I put specifically the admin user. Because, you know, we might have to give Tyron, you know, we might have to say you can't be a manager anymore, but you still work here. So we just move him from the managers group into the general staff group. You never know. And then finally, warehouse. So add warehouse, because warehouse isn't a group on its own. So nobody will only have warehouse. So Luke or Scott, for instance, they will still be general staff, but they'll have warehouse as an additional group. So I don't need to fill any of these. They've already got app access through the general staff group. All I would need to fill in is the warehouse, which let's say it's that one, apply, and put in an access time of warehouse access, because they are only allowed in the warehouse through working hours. Graham's asked, can 2 NFC tags be allocated to a user? Absolutely, you can allocate multiple NFC tags to a user. But that's my access groups with the permissions done, but I haven't added anyone to them yet. And I've done that on purpose because I'm now going to save in the mini server. So now that I've saved in the mini server, I can hand this over to Heather to start managing this system. Because what we will have, I just go to the web interface, which is 10.74.2.37, I think. Not 100% sure on that. Neither is this. Wonderful. Why is it not showing me an IP address there? Showing it currently as .60 because it's on DHCP. So let's try .60. There we go. So we're going to log in as Heather. Why is there an error? Why is there an error? What have I done? Let's try it through the Loxon app. As I said, I do run on internal alphas in the office for the specific reason of finding bugs. Okay, Heather. And she is password. Access denied. The user does not have access. I know what I've done. When I said I'd forgotten to, I hadn't put anyone in an access group. That's the reason that Heather can't log into the app, because she's not a member of an access group with that permission yet. So I'm going to add Heather to general staff just by dragging and dropping. So Heather should now be a member of general staff. As well as that, I'm going to manually give Heather permissions to manage users. So she's going to have that as a separate permission on her user rights, just for her as a specific person, not on her group. Sorry, guys, it's a long day. So let that resave. Here we go. And I'm now logged in as Heather. So Heather is now going to manage the rest of us in the app. So what she needs to do is she needs to go to the magnifying glass at the top right of the app. Then under here, she has user management. When she goes into user management, she will have to put her password in. Confirm. And she's now in user management. So she can't change groups, but what she can sort out is users. So Heather could start adding users freely. So she could add in Stephen as a user, for instance. And here we go. Here's Stephen. She could add a user group for Stephen. So Stephen is a member of general staff and warehouse. She could add in a password for Stephen. So Stephen has a password of support. She could add in an access code for Stephen. So she could give Stephen a key code to get through the door of 9999. And Heather can also add an NFC tag for Stephen. Now this won't work because I haven't given Heather a user interface password, but you can pair NFC tags through the app as well. So this is now Stephen created. I'm going to come off this. Come off this. Stephen is a member of general staff, meaning he should be able to get access through this door. So let's try it out. 9999, tick. Yep, the door is unlocked. History, which again, Heather needs her user interface password for. So let's give Heather a user interface password. Because she has user management rights, she should be able to give herself one. So user interface password, Heather is going to have 1111. Save. Go into this door, go to the history, 1111. Look at that. Front door lock by Stephen's access code. So Heather has added Stephen to groups. She's given him a key code. She's given him a password. Boom. To show you now that I have added a user interface code for Heather, adding in a tag. So user management again, and we'll use Stephen again as the example. Pair NFC tag, and what will happen is the NFC code touch starts flashing blue, and all you have to do is present the tag to it. It flashes green, and then it will ask you to give a name to that tag. So that was my pixel I just added in as a tag. If you have multiple NFC code touches, you even get the option here to select which NFC code touch you want to use as the one that learns in tags. And yes, you can assign multiple tags, as you can see here, to a single user. And Heather could then go into every other person and she could sort out their access. So Scott, for instance, let's actually do Magda. So Magda, Heather goes into Magda, select user group, and Magda is our cleaner. So Heather has sorted out Magda's permissions, and she's added in an access code for Magda of 6666. Save. You can even, if we go into somebody else, maybe Nico, and for Nico, we'll put him as a member of general staff. We'll add him a password. Again, he can just have password as well. Save. Give him an access code of 8888. Save. And then when you're on the user management screen in the app, you even have this little button up here. If you press that, press agree, what that will do is that will create a PDF document that you can share with that person that tells them what their access permissions are. So look, here is Nico's file that he has, his username, his password, and his access code, and also a QR code that he can scan in the Loxon app on his phone that will automatically add this system to his app. So whoever's managing users can also just press that for each person and email it to them, and boom, they've got their permissions done. And that is then user management in the app. That blows Net2 out of the water, in my opinion. A very good question has just come through on the chat. If a client has multiple venues, can a user and assigned NFC tag be used for all of those venues? And is it possible to transfer users to other mini servers in other locations? Yes. There is a brand new feature in config. It only works on Gen 2 mini servers called trusts. So down here in the periphery list, you will find a section called trusts. On the main mini server, so like the main office building, you create a trust. And this I'm going to call Loxon as an example. Once you've created the trust, you generate a trust key. And that is a physical file that you will save. Then, I'm just going to save that file. Then, what you do is every other system that you want to share those details across, you go onto that mini server, you press join trust, and then you select the trust key that you created on the main system, and then all of these mini servers are linked together across the remote connect service. They will share users, passwords, access codes, and NFC tags. User groups won't be, because different buildings can have different user groups. But yes, the users, NFC tag data, access codes, all of that stuff will be shared across every mini server in that trust. And it is specifically designed for that exact scenario where you have, say, an international business, funnily enough, like Loxon. So now every single one of our offices can be part of a trust, meaning that each office admin person in each building has to do is keep an eye on what new users there are that have just popped up and then assign them to, say, the general staff group, meaning I could fly out to Austria tomorrow and use the tag that gets me in this office to get into headquarters. Again, I do not know of another access control system that allows multi-building access so simply. Not without VPNs, not without all sorts of crazy SQL databases hosted on an Amazon web server somewhere. This is all done straight from the mini server, Gen 2 mini server using Remote Connect, which is then also an HTTPS encrypted connection as well. So fully encrypted end to end. Awesome. And that is it from me. That is an example of wiring an access control system up, configuring them, and then all of the extra gumph you can do for actually managing that system. I think that we are very, very close to being one of the best access systems on the market. I think hand on heart, the only system that can beat us in certain scenarios at the moment is Salto, because Salto is specifically designed around the hospitality market. But I think give us another couple of years, especially with our own hotel opening, and we will blow all other access systems out of the market. And the greatest thing is I've priced this up and you can do a door as a replacement system for roughly the same cost you could do Net2. There's not a huge amount in it. Cool, that's me done. Anyone got any other questions, anything else to ask, anything they want to know about? Yeah, brilliant, Seb. Thank you very much. So Seb's just made a suggestion of another topic for future webinars. That is, again, a reminder for everyone. We are going to continue doing these every 3 weeks. Need topics. That reminds me as well, please don't leave until I've done the poll so that you can select what you would like to see next time. I will make sure I add that. Seb and Adrian, I'll add your suggestion as well. When is the hotel opening? I believe it is due for completion beginning of next year. So we already have one of the warehouses open because I think we've just taken delivery of something like 1,200 pallets of a certain audio manufacturer's products to start distribution of. And I believe the hotel is one of the last things that will be completed at the beginning of next year. Cool. I'm going to put the poll up now. So please could everybody tick a topic for what they would like to cover in 3 weeks' time. So that is just launched now. So please, everyone, select a topic on the poll. I don't know where you can find the poll exactly. It should have just popped up automatically for everyone. And yeah, please tick your topic. I've added quite a few extras on there, so I'll give a couple more minutes so that everyone can just read through them and decide which one they want to do. Cool. Any other final questions? Any other final chats? Anything else anyone wants to ask? And if you would like to speak directly to me rather than typing a message in on the chat, you can use the raise hand feature and I can open the microphone for you. For future webinars, could we cover the intercom with NFC? Absolutely, as soon as it is actually available. As I showed, this one that I have in front of me is a dummy unit. So there's no electronics behind it. As soon as I have them in this office, I'll be doing probably an installation video of me sticking it on the front of this building. And yeah, absolutely, I'll do a webinar on them. Graham, yeah, pleasure. I'll speak to you tomorrow. Cool. Cheers, Adrian. See you next time. Rob, I could neither confirm nor deny what they might be. That is something to ask me one-on-one. They are fundamentally different products, and there is a caveat to it that I'll need to discuss with you tomorrow, because the answer will be, how desperately do you need them? How long ago did you order the ones that you think you might have be replacing with them? And there is a price difference. Cool. Cool. Thank you very much, everyone. I see that we've got pretty much everyone has done the poll as well. So I'm going to end the poll there, and I will speak to you again next time. Carl, you are making an assumption of what the new product might be. I have not confirmed anything. You might be completely wrong. All right. Cheers, guys. See you next time.